Welcome, Gautham. I'll just do a brief intro and then hand it over to you. A very good morning and good afternoon or good evening to all the people joining us from different regions. And a very warm welcome for our third episode at eGov Academy Learning Series. The first two that we did, we started with first introducing the eGov journey and taking the theory of change that we had. It's called five thread approach, where we talked about how we started our journey and how it got sustainable and exponential impact. And then the second in series was introducing the Digit, our open source platform. And today we will deep dive into knowing how policy, people, and program, when come together, can actually bring about transformative changes. And it is my pleasure to introduce Gautham. Gautham leads policy initiatives at e-governments with Government of India and various state governments. He began his career at Janagra, where he led the Ward Infrastructure Index program and was founding member of the Education Alliance. Gautham holds a MIB from the Fletcher School at Tufts University, where he focused on social enterprise and leveraging business models to serve underserved population. While at Fletcher, he also organized and co-chaired his first Tufts Innovation Symposium on scaling innovation in emerging markets. So today we will see how these three together and Gautham's also view of idea and the policy program and people initiative come together for collaborating and exponential impact. So we invite you all to engage, put your questions on Q&A. First 40 minutes will be presentation. Following that, we will have 15 minutes of Q&A sessions where you can put your questions in Q&A or raise hand. We can open that up for conversation. So over to you, Gautham.
Thank you, Shrija, and thank you for having me on today. So the question that got posed to me was, how can we resolve complex societal challenges with speed and at scale sustainably? And one of the pieces of thinking about this is it's very easy to solve in a single city context, maybe in a 10 city context, in a 20 city context, in a small locality. But when you have to respond to the kinds of issues that countries face with varying contexts, varying cultures all around the world, and being able to provide locally relevant solutions, but have some kind of common thread running through them, you need a new way of thinking. Now, platforms are the digital infrastructure that make this happen. Today, I'm going to talk about the physical human infrastructure that actually makes collaboration possible. So just to give an example, back in March 2018, there was a conversation going on in the urban sector in India. eGov started its journey in the urban space, but even in 2016-17, not more than 550 cities in India were digital, and 4,000 plus cities had not yet gone digital. Now, the conversation at the national level was exactly this slide, which is why you see the date March 2018, and the big headline was inaction, delay, systemic failure to fix our cities imposes a huge economic costs, right? That India's cities digest poverty, that they are concentrations of India's soft power, but without solving for some of the problems that we're seeing, which is traffic, lack of access to water, lack of access to safe housing, it would be really impossible to unleash the potential of urban India. And so this was a conversation that was happening, but what was embedded in this was 4,500 cities in India spread across something like 32 states and union territories. And on top of that, the language changed every single space. Now, when you even think about the actual constraints faced on cities, you found that urban systems and residents are constantly under stress, right? So they said, oh, there's not enough people to solve the problems, or we don't have the tools we need. We are constantly making decisions, so we are under decision fatigue. And half the time, ground realities were rarely analyzed. Sometimes there was also this question of, oh, even if we have data, we don't know how to use it because it's hardly ever updated. And then there's probably, like all of you know, the reward of doing a good job is you get more work to do. And so a few people in the city were over stretched, and then a lot of external consultants were brought in. And so the question back then is, if you have this city which has all these different stakeholders like citizens, municipal employees, elected representatives, business and industry, as well as government officials coming in to kind of give inputs to how the city should run. How would a city manager even get started? And so one of the pieces that everyone then agreed on was that all signals pointed to mass technology adoption as key to solving at scale. So this was the first part, right? Which is to say that we all agreed on the problem, and there was a shared narrative about what the problem was. So starting in 2018, we had started engaging with the urban ecosystem to build a shared narrative for not what the problem was. I think everyone was agreed on that. How could we solve the problem collectively as a country was the conversation. And so what happened was we saw that in 2019, the national government launched the National Urban Innovation Stack strategy and approach to provide a common digital infrastructure for cities in 2019. Today, this has led to the creation of the National Urban Digital Mission and the Urban Platform for Delivery of Online Governance. Uh, the Urban Platform for Delivery of Online Governance, or UPIOG, is built on top of Digit, the platform that Manish took you through last week. So, how did this journey happen? Well, to begin with, we see today that I told you that there were about 550 cities back in 2018 that were digital to some form. Today, 2,725 cities are under implementation, 1,407 cities are live. And so, citizens, that number has rapidly gone up. There's a big hockey stick moment. And what you will start to see here is there was a accelerated urban digitalization because there was a national strategy, there was program governance, there were program guidance, all in place, right? So there was a fit for purpose approach that worked so that somebody who was speaking Malayalam in Kerala could also use the same infrastructure as someone who was speaking Odia in Odisha, as well as somebody speaking Punjabi in Punjab. And it enables cities and states to say, I would come online in a Google Workspace kind of format. I want this in my own service, or I have a system and I will contribute data back. So it allowed cities and states to work in a way that worked for their respective conditions. Now, this was the policy design. On top of the policy design, you needed to make policies come alive. So you needed an institutional anchoring. And therefore, the government of India created the Center for Digital Governance at NIUA. And there's a 30 plus member team that got hired into that to just manage the rollout of this strategy across India and to provide support to the urban ecosystem to convene it and help states traverse that digital journey. Now, one more piece of innovation that they did on the policy side was to say, let's unlock procurement and finance. So, first off, there was upfront funding commitment from the government of India up to the tune of $760 million. There's some 67 partners who were pre-trained and empaneled and modeled RFPs, which allowed states to crunch the procurement timelines. And then urban India had a hockey stick moment for digital. So if you think about Digit itself, the number of instances we had live till about that time were about 4 or 5. Then you suddenly start seeing this climbing 15, 28, and the number of citizens starting to get served started increasing. The ecosystem came alive. So to make this happen, a couple of things came together. First of all, we said this can be done. And that's the importance of exemplars. Soumya would have talked to you about this in the 5 thread webinar. But if you can't tell people that it is possible, then it's very hard to convince large country governments to put public finance and public money behind scaling an approach that hasn't been shown to work at scale. So what ended up happening was in 2015, Andhra Pradesh took this approach of a common platform across all 110 cities back then, and it was able to deliver results. And this is what speaks at the end of the day, results, right? So it improved employee performance, it improved their ability to serve citizens, and it saved time for them. I keep saying this in multiple spaces. In the government, people work investment banking hours and they don't get investment banking pay. For cities, this meant that there was an increase in property tax collections, there was an 80% reduction in service request cycle times, and most of the transactions went cashless. As a result of that, citizen impact was also seen. People were happier with government, and then they were much more likely to file their services online. Therefore, over a period of time, what ended up happening was Andhra Pradesh started winning awards. This is another element of exemplification. If you are doing something right, people start talking about it. So, whether it was Smart City Awards, whether it was the national missions in India, whether it was government award programs, Andhra Pradesh kept winning award after award after award. And people said, how do we do what you do? And so there was a discussion that was brought together between people in the ministry and various states saying, how can we replicate the Andhra Pradesh success? By the time that happened, Punjab, which is a state in the north of India, had also shown that they could also repeat the same journey. So they had also got 1.8 million unique citizens registered. They had got some 55 services digitized. They got 165 ULBs digital. And they had rolled this out across 4,500 employees. And the best part of this was they did it faster than Andhra Pradesh. And therefore, the question became not that is this replicable? But now that we know it's replicable, how do we replicate this at national scale? So what happened was a coalition came together to build a narrative. There were 9 different organizations that are represented in this image. There's the National Institute of Urban Affairs, which today houses the Center for Digital Governance. There was Step Foundation. There was Agence France Development, which is the French equivalent of DFID or USAID. There was Step Foundation, Tata Trusts, one of India's oldest and most respected philanthropies. eGov Foundation itself. There were market participants from PwC and E&Y, as well as people from the urban think tank and urban ecosystem like Artha Global in the room. And together, this group spent over a period of 3 weeks time building a shared narrative saying if this has to work and this has to work across all the different states, it has to work in a way that brings together the ecosystem of markets, government, and civil society, Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar. Then we need a shared narrative. That shared narrative then became the National Urban Innovation Stack strategy that we saw launched. So it took a lot of people bringing together multiple perspectives, being open to each other, being willing to listen to each other, aligning under leadership from the government to deliver a shared narrative that would then lead to changing the trajectory of urban digital India. And because the shared narrative started to come about, this coalition grew over time. So what happened was people had inputs that said things like, hey, we need to make this more citizen centric. We need to make this more data forward. We need to start thinking about how we reach people who are normally excluded. And so a lot of people in the civil society ecosystem came forward saying, can we improve these strategies to make them more citizen centric? Can we help them go to the ground better? A lot of governments came forward to start implementing these systems. And a huge market ecosystem started to come about because they realized that this was going to start getting implemented. And it made sense for them to build business lines dedicated to supporting cities and states to go digital. And all of this to ensure citizens got better services and cities were livable. However, what I've been talking about so far is about how do you unlock a national ecosystem? How do you create national strategies? And it's possible to think that scale only means it's at the national level. It's possible to think that this model works well to take a great idea and only take it to scale. But I want to talk to you about what happens when an ecosystem comes together, anchored on a place and anchored on serving citizens as well. So magic is also possible at the state scale. And here it's possible to explore what coming together means to achieve depth, quality, and dignity in the kind of impact that we are creating. So the state of Odisha back in 2019 was keen to explore how they would get their services digitized. They picked the Digit platform and they got in a market ecosystem of PwC and E&Y to support them on implementing the platform. So the urban service delivery platform, which was called Sujog, came alive back then. In 2022, they started going live with fecal sludge management and sanitation. And so their ecosystem of the Center for Policy Research, Wash Institute, Urban Management Center, UNICEF, all came together to build a new system on top of the same rigid platform, extending it horizontally to serve sanitation needs. Now, all of you know that sanitation is a major challenge in India, and trying to get this done right, trying to do it in a way that is respectful of the workers working in the space, protects their dignity, is very important. In fact, a separate scheme was launched on top of this called Garima, which was all about providing welfare to sanitation workers and ensuring that they have the same respect in their jobs that we in our white collar jobs do. And this again came together because there was an ecosystem focused on people following the leadership of a state and surfacing multiple perspectives into solving for sanitation. In 2023, the state launched an urban livelihood program, which was anchored on empowering self help groups led by women and helped them both drive community participation at the local level and drive local level entrepreneurship. So cities that were built by the residents, for the residents, and managed by the residents. And in this model, again, Microsafe Consulting, Janagraha, Gates Foundation, all came together to solve this problem. Finally, even in the area of saying in areas of unauthorized colonies, how can we ensure services reach people who may not have land titles? Even for that, the state was able to use the same platform and extend it. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is at the end of the day, multiple people in this space brought in multiple lenses. What kept us aligned was we all wanted to serve very specific people, either the municipal employee or the citizen. And so at the end of the day, any arguments or any disagreements were all steps in a conversation towards saying how do you improve the quality of service delivery and how do you protect dignity of employees and of citizens on the front lines, right? And that's basically how an ecosystem can come together at the local level. Now, if any of you have been following the DPI and DPG world, Odisha is one of the premier examples of what inclusive, safe, and citizen-centric DPIs can look like. In fact, it's not just about the DPI, it's about overall governance and overall government service delivery. They have centered the citizen so strongly that today, being a citizen in Odisha means that you've received a quality of life that is, in some cases, better than what we will receive in the major metros in Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata. So magic is possible not because of technology alone, but because people start coming together, bringing shared perspectives, shared ideas, and start solving for these issues together on the ground floor. So, in the case of Odisha, I'm going to drop in a little further into the example of the Urban Livelihoods program. Typically, in some of these programs, what ends up happening is self help groups will get the contract and they will execute the project, but often they don't get paid on time. We hold them accountable on their delivery. And remember, these are people who are often sometimes barely above the poverty line, who are struggling to make ends meet. What they earn in the morning is what is consumed in the evening. And so when these self-help groups have to go to the markets to take loans, it means that it's eating into their ability to achieve any kind of financial stability, which means these families are always on the verge of some disaster pushing them back into poverty, right? And yet programs like this normally will end up in a space where, oh, you did the work, but we pay you 6 months later. And we hold you accountable for the work to decide whether we pay you $1 versus $2. But we don't hold ourselves accountable to the work, to paying you in time, right? And so the state of Andhra Pradesh said, this is not, the state of Odisha said, this is not how we are going to work. They said, we're going to ensure you get paid almost real time. And we're going to ensure that this payment in real time means that you do not have to take loans. And therefore, this ecosystem of Microsafe Consulting, Janagraha, Gates Foundation, eGov Foundation, the Odisha government, and all the self-help groups in the Mission Shakti movement came together to say, let's create a 90% reduction in time to pay. And that meant that people got paid within the same week. They could start planning, they could start saving, they could start investing. And so, from being just people who were delivering government projects, they were able to start building savings and investing these savings into setting up local enterprises like pickle making, agarbatti making, sari making. And therefore, you created a pathway not just out of poverty, but to entrepreneurship, dignity, as well as self respect, even within their own communities. So it may seem like a small thing, paying someone on time, but I can assure you it makes the difference between feeling desperate and feeling empowered. And so these kinds of magic happen not because the technology existed or didn't exist. It happened because the technology came in, but there was a collective will, a collective narrative that said, how do we serve this one entrepreneur? And how do we ensure that she is respected and uh, her needs are met? So, if I were to give an overall message on this, it would just be that collaboration is key to exponential scale. Technology is a lever, but what needs to shift are our mindsets and our attitudes. There are three critical components that all work together. I think the first one, which a lot of people coming into development, into systems change, switching from the corporate sector struggle with, is really acknowledging the government. Because it's very hard when you don't have to engage with the government on a day to day basis to understand that the government is actually working. And often you think of the government as this monolith, as this one entity for which you met this one person and he will make all the decisions. But the reality of life is that government is a massive, massive entity with multiple departments, multiple levels, multiple hierarchies. It's an ecosystem of its own. Decision making is distributed. So even within government, you have to understand that it is not enough to get a single yes. You have to build a coalition of the willing who are willing to make the policy reforms, the budget allocations, and the program structures and the program implementations that will actually take your ideas to scale. Otherwise, you will keep knocking on these doors saying, but they don't listen to me. If you figure out how the government works, if you've mapped them and if you've navigated them and you've brought that coalition of the willing together, they will make things move. Often the other challenge that we come across is we do not even understand the roles of different government officers, their authorities, their constraints, and their incentives. And because we don't understand this, we end up going and asking them for different demands that they may not be able to service. Think of this as going and asking your pediatrician for a root canal. Technically, they're both doctors, but one can give you a root canal, one cannot, right? So it's important to understand the government and to fully internalize the structures, to map out the people, to build those relationships. And I think the most important thing is this. Quite often we see people coming into the space thinking that, oh, this is a problem that's never been solved. I am going to come, I shall be the savior, right? Almost like a messiah complex, and saying, so far nobody's managed to solve anything, and I'm actually going to come and solve this. And what they often forget is that the government ecosystem is already acting. In India itself, it's a massive, massive workforce that is continuously serving people, right? And so if you think about the fact that people are already acting, then it shifts your mind to say, here's a machine, here's a set of people, here's an institution that will serve, help me achieve the scale I want. How do I align with them? How do I find common cause? Often we find that it's easy for people to bridge this first gap after maybe two, maybe three, maybe 4 years of working in the development sector, and say, okay, now I need to recognize the government and I need to work with them. But often the other barrier that they run into is they don't realize that there's, apart from them, a broader ecosystem out there: education, healthcare, workers' rights. These are all spaces that have a large number of actors already working in the space, right? And so we need to understand that we are but one actor working in a broader ecosystem, and everyone is engaging with the government. So it's not enough for us to engage the government alone. You also have to engage the ecosystem. So identify people who have shared value, shared cause, who may, for example, be serving the same populations. Start making friends amongst other organizations. Identify your potential champions over there, people who will move their organizations, move the needle on this so that you can collaborate. And this is not going to happen if you say, hey, I got a great idea and let's solve this, right? I need you to come in with money or people. It's actually about saying, here's a problem that we both care about, and here's how we can combine our strengths. So you need to build a narrative that is both imaginative, but also relevant to their organization so they have the ability to move their organization. And often we find that in this kind of a scenario, success is only possible when it is shared. So this is not about eGov's success or Odisha's success or Gates Foundation success or Microsafe's success. It's about the success of the Mukta program that happened when we all aligned and forgot about who really had control, right? And so it's an important mind shift. Often you may have perspectives, and it's easy to go far when you're together. It's easy to go fast when you're alone. But in this kind of a space, we need to go far, not just fast. Finally, collaboration is the foundation, right? If you've got champions within government, if you've got champions within other ecosystem actors, it's not enough for us to be individual bridges. We need to create shared spaces, shared rooms, bring in people to surface their concerns, voice their agreements, voice their disagreements, work through the thorny problems. The other thing is we need to align the actions and asks to the incentives of their stakeholders. And frankly speaking, quite often we've been in places where people come and make asks of us that we are unable to service. Um, and in government, I've heard this many times where people say, here's what I can give, here's what I can't give. And this happens because often you're constrained by the rules of your organization, you're constrained by the rules of your institution. And knowing your stakeholders, knowing their incentives allows you to make the ask that helps them take that one step forward towards a shared future. Again, let's come back to the state of Odisha, right? All of us were focused on that one entrepreneur. It wasn't about who had the best idea, or who had the best technology, or who had the most clout. It was serving the woman entrepreneur in a self-help group that made us all pull together, rework policy, rework technology, rework programs to ensure they got paid on time. So keep the focus on the outcomes and not on the credit, and magic will happen. I think in this whole journey of ours, what we have seen is the digital infrastructure is the easier part to build. This human stack of people who trust each other, who build shared circles of trust and pull more people into the ecosystem, grow the ecosystem so that ideas can scale faster than our own capabilities and our own bandwidths. That's the hard part. And it starts with respect and listening to one another. So I know this may sound like a very simple message to pass on. It's very hard to live. But if you are all interested in engaging and working to solve for public services at scale, we are here to listen and we are here to work with you. With that, I'm done with my slides and the presentation, and I'm here to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Gautam. So, if I have to consolidate the entire presentation of 30 minutes, the effective policies or transformation that doesn't happen in vacuum. It's always when people from every spectrum come together and have a multidisciplinary approach towards it, from citizens to market to government together, collaboration, and they start co-creating, then only the transformation will start to happen. So, thank you so much, Gautam. So, I'll open this platform for everyone, the participants. If you have any questions, please, you can share your questions on QA, or you can also raise hand. So, no question. Should we consider it a fantastic presentation that everyone got the point. I think they also concur to everything that you said.
Yes, Peter.
Am I muted?
Yes, yes, Peter, go ahead.
I can go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Because it's a very good. Was a very good presentation. I think is a very good learning point for some of us. I think we have similar scenarios on the Kenyan ecosystem, and we find this to be one of the good areas of learning. I think we have a local representative here with Foundation. I think. And there's a lot of learning we are getting from the Indian stack in terms of these approaches. And these trainings are very critical, especially countries which are on the same pedestal which Kenya and India are in. And these exchanges will become very important to help build digital ecosystems across the globe. I do not represent government in this talk, in this call. I don't represent myself. I'm involved in, we run what we call the eCitizen platform, a Kenyan digital platform, which offers a single sign-on, access to services and payment. Obviously, with the resemblance of your there, partly in terms of the service access and payments. So your DG approach and also what has been presented, it looks quite familiar, and that's why I found it very, very important for me to have a feel and experience. I would be very keen to loop in my part of my teams to be able to be listening to this, and probably if we can have a virtual training on what you're doing, and probably for us to also learn and to see the experience which and be able to get from this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. And the Academy does run multiple training sessions that are open sessions where you can bring your teams to join in. I see two more questions on here. So there's one from James, which is saying, has your approach changed when moving outside India? I think this is an important one. So short answer is yes. In India, we were a known entity. We understood the culture, we understood the languages, we had the context. And so we were able to engage much more directly by ourselves. As we have gone outside of India, in places like Mozambique, in places like Liberia or Nigeria, we've had to figure out the local culture and the local context. So not only have we got team members who have joined us in those countries who understand the local culture and the local context, but we've also got a emerging partner ecosystem that's growing in these countries who understand the requirements on the ground and are able to tell us when something is the same, something is different, and they share trust. So we share trust with them, they share trust with the governments and with the communities that need to be served. So even more so, collaboration and partnership is the only way that we can go global, because there is no way that sitting in Bangalore or sitting in Delhi, we'll be able to understand the cultural context or the economic realities or the social realities of what it is to serve somebody in the Tit province in Mozambique. I hope I've answered your question, James. I also see a question from Anand PK saying, can you provide a few instances wherein the digitization has strengthened transparency and accountability? Great.
Accountability.
Yeah, so what I will definitely do is talk about the state of Andhra Pradesh here, Anand. The state of Andhra Pradesh did something that was quite different compared to a lot of other states. They put their internal administrative dashboards out in the public for everyone to review. The chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, the department heads of Andhra Pradesh, the city commissioners, and as well as the local field representatives all operated on the same dashboards. That was a single source of truth. The citizens also could see this. What this led to was the conversation was never about, oh, tell me what's the actual data. The data was available on the dashboards. The question was, why did something get completed? Why did something not get completed? And that was the conversation inside the ULB rooms or inside the city halls. Um, in addition, what ended up happening was because there was a lot of public visibility, then certain people actually used these dashboards as a way to perform, improve their performance, use that when they were actually looking at promotions as well as performance appraisals, as well as this allowed the government to identify not that a city was not functioning well, but maybe that a specific official was not doing his job and then intervene where it was needed. So at all levels, common dashboards for the state that allowed you to figure out in each city what was being asked by the citizens, what was being delivered, where were the gaps, and who was responsible, led to that kind of performance improvement. So
There
I
is
hope
one
I
more
didn't.
question, Gautam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just read that out. Can you provide challenges of scale and adoption by beneficiary under Mukta scheme in Odisha? Can you also share the impact pre and post implementation? It is by Priyanka.
Okay, so in terms of the challenges of scale and adoption in Odisha for Mukta, we've seen that the original scheme was one where a lot of the checks and balances, the approaches were completely paper-based initially. This led to an average delay of 6 months in paying the frontline workers, right? It was actually working with them to say, and then post implementation, this came down by 98%, right? The challenge was actually working with government to build that trust across the finance department, across the ULB, across the self-help group that a the system would enable you to carry out the same checks and balances much faster, and those are important to do because you're going to be dispersing public funds. But also b you didn't need 17 or 30 checks, you only needed three in between. And so the ability to focus on the process, identify what was being asked for in a paper world, which did not need to be asked for in a digital world, designing the systems with all the users together, meant that you were able to come down to just three checks before you paid someone. And therefore, this brought the overall timeline down. Now, the big challenge is coming at that shared vision and that shared narrative. Once you're implementing these systems, the challenge in getting people to trust it and adopt it was something we addressed upfront because we designed with the users. All our prototypes are built in the field with our community partners. So before we wrote a single line of code, they had actually done paper mockups, digital mockups, and they played with it to say, yeah, maybe I can use this. Maybe it works for me. And it's only when they said, yeah, I can use it, that we said, okay, now let's build it. So some of that helped mitigate some of the challenges in the adoption phase. When it came to scale up, one of the issues that did happen was there was a full scale election going on in the state. And now what's happening is the Mukta application itself is evolving into a statewide option for works management. And again, this is an example of how, as context changes, platforms evolve to meet them in keeping with the needs that are now there. I also see Clement has
There's,
a
yes,
question.
Clement has a
Short
question.
answer,
It is,
Clement, yes.
hmm. Do you want me to
We
read
do.
it for all the audience?
Yes, please do.
Um, so the question is, do you support countries like Nigeria with digit application and how it works?
Yes, we do. In fact, we do have our health campaign module working in multiple states in Nigeria, serving malaria campaigns on the ground. We've had conversations with the government of Nigeria in the past where, up to your honorable minister, we've seen interest in adopting Digit. And so, anytime that the government of Nigeria wants to implement Digit, we are available. Academies available for all the trainings, and we are keen to partner with your local ecosystems to ensure this is locally owned and locally run. And it serves Nigeria in the same way that it serves the citizens of India.
So I have that. I hope that answers Clement's question. Um, Do we have any more questions from the audience? Gautam is here and I'm happy to answer that. Oh, we have. What if it is for a state in Nigeria? Okay.
Okay, doable. A lot of our implementations have been at the state level. So we can do that. If you want to, I would suggest reaching out to us on contact@egov.org.in. We will also put that up in the chat so that we can get the right team interface with you. Okay, this one more.
Thanks, Clement. So we have 10 more minutes to go. We can take many more questions. Okay. So yeah, we'll get to, so we are towards the closure of the webinar then. And what we'll do is we will send out an email with all the contacts so that people who want to reach out to us can reach out. One is the Academy website, the Academy email ID. I've already posted it on the chat. So you can write to us. We will be more than happy to engage. We'll also share two more email IDs to all the registered participants, whoever has joined today, so that you can contact us easily. And our team will be more than happy to engage and walk you through the process. And thank you so much, Gautam. Thank you so much for the webinar. So, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. So we do this every second and fourth of month. It's a webinar series. Please go and check that the entire series on our eGov website. It's under event and you will have the access to all the series, the list of webinars that will be conducted till next year, Chan. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We look forward to your next participation. Thank you.